The night was silent except for the low hum of the old generator behind the man's cabin. He had walked this path many times before, carrying tools, firewood, or food supplies, but tonight felt different. The air was heavy, and a strange sound echoed through the trees, soft, broken sobs carried by the cold wind. The man, his name was Daniel, stopped in his tracks. He listened again. Yes, there it was. A cry, weak, fragile, almost too faint to notice. It didn't sound like any animal he knew. It wasn't the howl of a wolf or the hiss of night creatures. It was something else, something that chilled his heart. He followed the sound step by step through the dark forest. His flashlight cut through the shadows, brushing against twisted roots and damp ground. The sobbing grew clearer. It was not random noise. It was pain, fear, helplessness. And then Daniel saw it. At the edge of a ruined outpost, an old military station no one used anymore, there was a metal cage. The cage was rusty, chained to the wall like someone had tried to bury it in secrecy. Inside, huddled against the cold bars, was a girl. She was not human. Her skin had a faint glow, pale silver under the flashlight. Her hair was tangled, her arms thin as sticks, and her body wrapped in nothing but dirt and bruises. She shook as if the air itself was hurting her. Her eyes lifted slowly when she felt the light on her face. They were large, shining with strange colors like galaxies trapped in tears. Daniel froze. His mind screamed at him to run. Who knew what she was? An alien, a trick, a weapon left behind? But his heart refused to move. Because what he saw was not a monster. It was a girl, alone, broken, crying. Please, she whispered, her voice hoarse, almost lost. Please, no more. Daniel gripped the bars of the cage. They were ice cold. His heart hammered. Who would do this? Who would lock a living being like this, without clothes, without food, without hope? He tried the lock. Rusted, strong, impossible to break with bare hands. The girl flinched when his fingers touched the bars as if expecting pain. She had been treated like this before, left to rot, left to cry, left to believe no one would come. Who did this to you? Daniel asked quietly. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Only tears. Daniel looked around. The station was abandoned, but there were signs. Footsteps in the dirt, burned out fires. Someone had been here not long ago. Whoever put her here could return at any moment. He knew he should leave. He had no weapon, no plan. But leaving her? No, that was worse than death itself. He knelt close, keeping his voice calm. I'll get you out, he promised. You're safe now. The girl shook her head violently, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. She pointed toward the dark woods with trembling fingers. They will come back. Daniel's blood ran cold. Whoever they were, they sounded dangerous. Hunters, soldiers, slavers, he didn't know, but he could feel her terror. Still, he couldn't walk away. He grabbed a loose pipe lying nearby and slammed it against the lock. The sound cracked through the night. The girl whimpered, covering her ears, thinking it was punishment. Daniel stopped and softened his voice. No, I'm not here to hurt you, he said. I'm here to help, he struck again. Sparks flew. The lock bent but didn't break. Every hit was loud, too loud, like an alarm calling enemies. He knew time was short. Finally, with one desperate swing, the lock shattered. The door creaked open. The girl didn't move. She pressed back into the corner, too scared to believe freedom was real. Daniel lowered the pipe and stretched out his hand. It's all right. You're free now, come. For a moment, silence, only her shaky breath. Then slowly, she crawled forward, her hands shaking as they touched the open air outside the cage. And at that moment, deep in the forest, Daniel heard voices. Harsh, angry voices, getting closer. The ones who locked her up were coming back. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum. The girl was trembling in front of him, her silver skin shining faintly in the beam of his flashlight. The forest whispered around them, but the new sound, angry voices moving closer, was impossible to ignore. Whoever had locked her here was returning. Come on, he whispered urgently. We have to go, the girl froze. Her bare feet barely touched the ground as she crouched, ready to crawl back into the cage. Daniel's stomach twisted when he saw it. She would rather lock herself inside again than risk facing them. Whoever they were, they had broken her spirit. No, Daniel said, shaking his head firmly. He placed his hand on the cage door and pushed it wide open. You're not going back in. Not ever. Her eyes widened, glowing like stars caught in fear. She whispered in a shaky voice, They hurt. They will hurt you too. Daniel forced a smile, though his chest felt like stone. Then they'll have to catch me first. The footsteps were louder now. Branches cracked. Torches flickered in the distance. Daniel didn't have a plan, but instincts took over. He grabbed the girl's wrist gently, not too tight, not like a captor, but like someone guiding her to safety, and pulled her away from the station. Her body was cold to the touch. She stumbled at first, weak from hunger and fear. Daniel slowed his pace just enough so she could keep up. Every second mattered. Every heartbeat was a countdown. They moved through the forest, weaving between trees, sliding down small slopes. Daniel switched off his flashlight and trusted the moonlight above. The girl's faint glow helped too, though he realized it could betray their position if the hunters saw it. Behind them, the voices grew sharper. "Check the cage," one of them barked. Another cursed loudly. "The lock's broken." "Someone's here." Daniel pulled the girl lower to the ground. They crouched behind a fallen log, breath shallow, listening as the men stormed the outpost. From the voices, Daniel counted at least 4, maybe 5. Their footsteps were heavy, confident, like people who thought they owned the night. "Spread out." "Find them," a voice ordered. The girl pressed her face into her knees, shaking. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "Quiet," he whispered. For a moment, silence stretched across the forest. Only the distant hum of insects and the girl's trembling breaths filled the air. Then came the sound of boots crunching closer. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon except the rusty pipe he'd used to break the lock. The men, from the way they shouted, likely carried guns or worse. He looked at the girl, fragile, barefoot, terrified. And he knew one thing clearly. He couldn't let them take her back. One of the hunters passed so close Daniel could see the glow of his torchlight through the trees. The man muttered under his breath, kicking at roots, his gun clinking against his belt. The girl let out the faintest whimper. Daniel quickly covered her mouth with his hand. Not rough, not cruel, just desperate. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a second she understood. She stayed silent. The hunter stopped. He turned his head sharply. The torch beam swept across the forest. Daniel's muscles tensed, every nerve screaming to stay still. The girl's tears slipped down his hand, warm against his skin. Finally, the hunter moved on, cursing again. His boots crunched farther away. Daniel exhaled slowly, removing his hand. The girl gasped softly for air. She whispered, Why help me?" Daniel thought for a moment. The answer wasn't simple. He didn't know her. She wasn't even human. But looking at her, so broken, so lost, he couldn't imagine leaving her to die in a cage. "Because no one deserves this," he said quietly. "Not you. Not anyone." The girl blinked. Something shifted in her gaze, still fear, but also a spark of wonder. She had expected cruelty, not kindness. Before Daniel could say more, the voices rose again. "Tracks, over here." They had found their trail. Daniel grabbed her hand again. "Run!" he hissed. The two of them darted through the forest, branches whipping their faces, roots trying to trip their feet. The girl stumbled but held on tightly this time. Behind them, torches flared and shouts filled the night. The hunt had begun. The forest roared with sound. Torches flashed in the darkness, and the angry voices of the hunters grew closer with every second. Daniel pushed forward, gripping the alien girl's trembling hand. Her bare feet stumbled against rocks and roots, but she didn't let go. Fear gave her strength she didn't know she had. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. "Don't let them escape. They can't be far." Daniel's lungs burned as he ran. The rusty pipe he carried in his other hand felt heavy now, more like a burden than a weapon. But he refused to drop it. It was all he had to protect her. The girl's faint glow lit the way ahead, though Daniel wished she didn't shine at all. It made them easy to spot. Still, he noticed something strange. When her fear spiked, the glow dimmed, almost vanishing, as though her body wanted to hide itself from danger. "Keep going," Daniel urged. "Just a little farther." They crashed through the trees until the sound of water filled the air, a river cutting through the forest. Daniel's hope rose for a moment. Maybe they could follow it, wash away their trail, or cross to the other side. But the current was fast, white foam breaking against sharp rocks. Crossing with her like this would be suicide. The girl gasped for air, clutching her chest. She was too weak, too fragile. If they didn't find shelter soon, the hunters would catch them. Daniel scanned the area quickly. His eyes landed on a cluster of fallen logs and heavy roots forming a hollow space near the riverbank. It wasn't much, but it could hide them for a short while. Here, he whispered, pulling her down into the hollow. They crouched inside, hearts pounding, the smell of damp earth filling their lungs. The girl curled into herself, hugging her knees tightly. Her glowing eyes stared at Daniel. They never stop, she whispered. Always hunt. Always hurt. Daniel wanted to ask who they were, but the sound of boots on the riverbank silenced him. The hunters had arrived. Torches swayed above the water. One man crouched, scanning the rocks. Tracks end here, another spat. River washed them away, clever. A third growled. They won't get far. Spread out. Keep searching. Daniel held his breath, every muscle tight. The girl buried her face against his arm, muffling her sobs. He could feel her shaking. Minutes passed like hours. The hunters lingered, shining lights into the trees. Daniel's mind raced with escape plans. If they stayed here too long, they would be found. But if they ran now, they would be seen. Finally, one of the hunters cursed loudly. Forget it. They won't survive out here. We'll find the body in the morning. Their voices faded as they moved downstream, torches glowing like fireflies until the forest swallowed them. Daniel let out a slow breath, his whole body trembling with relief. The girl lifted her head, tears shining in her strange eyes. You saved me. Again, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. We're not safe. He studied her more closely now. Her body was covered in bruises and dirt. Thin lines across her arms looked like lash marks. Her lips were cracked, her voice faint. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. Do you have a name? Daniel asked gently. She hesitated as if the word was dangerous. Finally, she whispered, Lyra. Lyra, Daniel repeated softly. The name fit her, fragile but carrying hidden strength. Her eyes glistened. Why do you help me, Daniel? The sound of his name on her lips surprised him. She must have overheard when the hunters cursed his name earlier in the chaos. Still, the question pierced his chest. He sighed. Because I can't stand seeing someone treated like this. I don't care if you're human or alien. You deserve better. Lyra stared at him, confusion and hope mixing in her gaze. She whispered, No one ever said that before. Before Daniel could answer, a sharp howl tore through the night. Not a human voice. Something bigger. Something hunting. Lyra's body stiffened in terror. They released the hounds. Daniel gripped the rusty pipe tighter. The hunters weren't giving up after all. He looked at Lyra, her silver skin glowing faintly in the shadows. She was weak, broken, but alive, and now she was his responsibility. Stay close, Daniel said, his jaw tight. We move again, and this time we fight if we have to. The howl echoed again, closer now, shaking the trees. The hunt wasn't over. It was only beginning. The howl rolled through the trees like thunder, shaking the night. Daniel felt the sound in his bones. He had heard wolves before, but this was different. Deeper, sharper, unnatural. These were not ordinary animals. Beside him, Lyra's trembling grew worse. Her glowing eyes were wide with terror. They are not dogs, she whispered. They are machines. Made for blood. Daniel's stomach sank. So that was the hunter's trick. They didn't rely only on men with torches. They had released beasts, half metal, half flesh, that would never stop until they tasted blood. The forest fell silent for a moment, as if the trees themselves were afraid. Then came the sound. Claws tearing through dirt, gears grinding inside throats, breath like fire. The hounds were coming fast. Daniel gripped the rusty pipe tighter. He knew the truth. He couldn't fight machines with just a stick. But he couldn't let Lyra know his fear. She was already broken. If she lost hope now, she would collapse. Stay behind me, he whispered firmly. No matter what. Lyra shook her head violently. They cannot be stopped. You will die for me. Daniel gave her a quick, sharp look. Then we die running, not waiting. The first hound burst through the trees. Its body gleamed in the moonlight, metal ribs covered with patches of black fur, eyes glowing red like burning coal. Its mouth opened, and Daniel saw steel fangs sharp enough to crush bone. The creature snarled and lunged. Daniel swung the pipe with every ounce of strength he had. Metal slammed against metal, sparks flying. The hound staggered sideways, growling, but it didn't fall. Run! Daniel shouted. He and Lyra bolted through the trees. Behind them, more howls rose, 3, 4, maybe more. The hunters had released a pack. Branches whipped their faces. Roots tried to trip their feet, but they didn't stop. Daniel's chest burned with every breath. Lyra stumbled again and again, her bare feet cut on stones, but she forced herself forward. Suddenly, the ground dropped. A steep ravine opened before them, carved by the river below. The current rushed violently, smashing against rocks. Daniel's heart froze. No bridge, no way across. Behind them, the hounds closed in, glowing eyes bouncing between trees. Lyra gasped, tears streaming down her face. "We are trapped," Daniel scanned quickly. His mind raced. Then he saw it. An old fallen tree lying across part of the ravine, half snapped but still stretching to the other side. It was narrow, wet, and dangerous, but it was their only chance. "This way," he said, grabbing her hand. They climbed onto the log. It creaked under their weight, slick with moss. The river roared below, promising death with one slip. Halfway across, the first hound leapt onto the log behind them. Its claws sank into the bark as it crawled closer, red eyes fixed on their backs. Lyra screamed. Daniel shoved her forward. "Go, don't look back." The hound snarled and lunged again. Daniel swung the pipe in a desperate arc. The hit connected, knocking the beast sideways. For a moment it hung on the edge of the log, claws scraping. Then it fell. The sound of metal and flesh breaking against rocks below filled the air. But there were more. 2 more hounds reached the start of the log. Their glowing eyes locked on Daniel and Lyra as they advanced slowly, steady, without fear. The log shook under the weight. Daniel knew they couldn't fight on this narrow path. He shoved Lyra forward harder. "Run to the other side." She made it across, dropping to her knees on the far bank, reaching out with trembling hands. "Daniel, come." Daniel sprinted the last steps. Just as he leapt onto solid ground, one hound lunged at him. Its jaws snapped inches from his leg, missing by luck alone. Daniel landed hard, rolled, and scrambled up. Behind him, the log cracked under the hound's combined weight. The wood gave way with a loud snap, and both beasts fell into the river below, dragged away by the current. For a moment, silence returned. Only the river's roar filled the night. Daniel bent over, gasping, his body shaking. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes. Slowly, she whispered, You fight for me like no one ever did." Daniel gave her a tired smile. "Get used to it. I'm not leaving you," but his relief didn't last. From across the ravine, torchlight appeared. The hunters had caught up, shouting in rage as they saw their hounds destroyed, and they had guns. Daniel pulled Lyra into the trees again. "Come on, this isn't over." The torches burned like angry stars on the other side of the ravine. The hunters shouted in rage, their voices bouncing across the rushing water. Guns glinted in their hands. They couldn't cross now, the log bridge was gone, but Daniel knew they would find another way soon. He turned to Lyra. Her silver skin glowed faintly, her breathing ragged. She was exhausted, but her eyes begged for hope. "We keep moving," Daniel said, gripping the pipe tighter. "They'll circle around." The forest ahead was dark and endless, the kind of place where men vanished without a trace. Daniel guided her through the thick trees, their footsteps muffled by layers of fallen leaves. Every sound, the hoot of an owl, the crack of a branch, felt like danger waiting to strike. For hours they stumbled deeper into the wild. Lyra's strength waned, her body trembling with each step. Finally her legs gave out and she collapsed against a tree, clutching her chest. "I can't," she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her. Sweat dripped down his face, his chest rising and falling fast. He wanted to tell her to push on, but one look at her broken body stopped him. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't built for this. "We'll rest," he said softly. "Just a moment, but where?" He scanned the area and spotted something strange, a dark opening between 2 cliffs hidden by hanging vines. At first it looked like a shadow, but when he brushed the vines aside, he saw the mouth of a cave. It was deep, cool, and silent. Shelter. Daniel helped Lyra inside. The cave walls were jagged, carved by time. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. The air smelled of earth and stone, but it was safe from the hunters, for now. Lyra sank to the ground, curling up, her glowing skin dimming almost to nothing. Daniel crouched beside her, worry pulling at him. "You need food. Water," he said. She shook her head. "I need nothing." "Not anymore," Daniel frowned. "Don't say that." Her glowing eyes lifted to meet his. "You don't understand. I was not only their prisoner. I was their test. Their trophy. They used me until I had nothing left. When you found me, I had already given up. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen broken people before, victims of cruelty, but never like this. She wasn't just scared. She was convinced her life had no value. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Then listen carefully. You're not their trophy anymore. You're not their victim. You're free, Lyra. As long as I breathe, no one is ever locking you in a cage again. Her lips parted, trembling. For a moment she seemed ready to argue, but instead tears welled in her glowing eyes. Silent, she pressed her forehead against his arm. Daniel sat there, letting her cry quietly, listening to the echo of her sobs in the cave. He felt something stir inside him. Not just pity, but a fierce determination. Whoever those hunters were, whatever they wanted, they had made a mistake. Because now Lyra wasn't alone. A sudden sound cut through the moment. Click. Daniel froze. It was faint but clear, the sound of metal against stone. He gripped the pipe, rising slowly. Another click echoed deeper in the cave. Not hunters. Not boots. Something else. Lyra's eyes widened. This place is not empty. The shadows shifted. From deeper inside, two glowing shapes emerged, small, crawling on thin limbs. Their eyes reflected the faint light like mirrors. Daniel's pulse spiked. Stay behind me, he whispered. The creatures crept closer, their movements sharp, insect-like. They weren't hunters, but they weren't friendly either. This cave wasn't just shelter. It was home to something else. One of the creatures hissed, its mouth unfolding like broken metal. Daniel tightened his grip on the pipe. So much for rest. He glanced at Lyra. Her fear was plain, but there was also something else in her eyes. Recognition. You know them? Daniel asked quickly. Her voice was barely a whisper. They are guardians. Left here long ago. Not made for men like you. The creatures crawled closer, their bodies twitching, claws scraping the stone. Daniel's jaw tightened. Hunters outside. Guardians inside. No safe ground left. Then we convince them we belong, he muttered. He stepped forward. Pipe raised, ready for whatever came next. The two creatures crawled closer, their claws scraping the cave floor like knives across stone. Their eyes glowed white, not like the hunter's red torches or Lyra's galaxy-colored gaze, but pale and empty. Soulless light. Daniel held the pipe ready, his stance wide. He had fought beasts, men, even metal hounds, but these things felt different. They moved with purpose, like shadows given form. Lyra gripped his arm tightly, whispering, "Do not fight them. They are not alive in the way you think. They are guardians. They test all who enter." Daniel frowned, sweat dripping down his face. Test? Test for what? Her voice trembled. For worth. The creatures hissed, their bodies jerking like puppets. One lunged, its claws swiping. Daniel swung the pipe hard, sparks flying as metal clashed against alien bone. The force knocked the creature back, but it didn't fall. Instead, it circled him, its glowing eyes fixed on his every move. The second guardian crept toward Lyra, jaws opening wide. She froze, trembling. Daniel's instincts roared. "No!" he shouted. He lunged, pushing Lyra aside just as the creature's claws slashed down. Pain exploded across his arm where the claws scraped his skin, tearing fabric and flesh. He gritted his teeth, refusing to drop the pipe. The guardians paused, tilting their heads in eerie silence. Then, as if some signal passed between them, they stepped back. The cave grew quiet again, save for Daniel's harsh breathing and Lyra's frightened gasps. The creature's eyes dimmed, and one spoke, not with a mouth, but inside their minds. The voice was cold, metallic, ancient. "You bleed for her. You choose her life before your own. You are worthy." Daniel's chest heaved. His grip on the pipe tightened, unsure whether to believe what he had just heard. "What do you mean, worthy?" The second guardian's glowing eyes turned to Lyra. "The key lives in her. She carries what they hunt. If she dies, hope dies. If she lives, change comes." Lyra's breath caught. She shook her head violently. No, I am nothing. I was their prisoner. Their toy." The guardians moved closer again, not with aggression, but with strange reverence. "You are more. That is why they caged you. That is why they fear you." Daniel looked at her sharply. "Lyra, what are they talking about?" Tears streamed down her silver cheeks. I don't know. I only know pain, chains, darkness." The guardians bowed their heads slightly, then retreated into the deeper shadows of the cave. Their voices echoed one last time in Daniel's mind. "Protect the key. The hunters will never stop. If she survives, so will you. If she falls, the world falls, and then they were gone." The cave fell into silence once more. Daniel lowered the pipe slowly, his heart still racing. Lyra collapsed to her knees, covering her face with trembling hands. I don't understand. Why me? Why always me? Daniel crouched beside her, ignoring the blood dripping from his arm. He placed his hand on her shoulder firmly. Because they see what you don't. You're not weak, Lyra, you're important. To them, to me, and maybe to more than we know. Her glowing eyes peeked through her tears, filled with confusion and a faint spark of hope. But before Daniel could say more, a gunshot cracked through the night. The sound echoed into the cave from outside. The hunters had arrived. Voices barked orders closer than ever. Check the cave. Don't let them escape again, Daniel cursed under his breath. There was no time to rest. No time to think about ancient guardians or mysterious destinies. He stood quickly, pulling Lyra to her feet. We have to move now. But as they turned deeper into the cave, Daniel noticed something strange. The walls glowed faintly, symbols carved into the stone. They pulsed with soft light, responding to Lyra's presence. The guardian's words echoed in his mind again. The key lives in her. Daniel realized the truth. They weren't just running anymore. The cave wasn't only a hiding place. It was leading them somewhere the hunters didn't want them to reach. Stay close, Lyra, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. This cave has answers, and I think they're meant for you. Behind them, the hunters' boots stomped closer, their voices sharp and eager. Ahead of them, the glowing path waited, promising secrets and dangers Daniel couldn't imagine. The chase was far from over. The hunters' boots echoed like war drums at the cave's mouth. Their torches lit the walls, sending sharp shadows crawling across the stone. Daniel pulled Lyra deeper, following the strange glowing symbols. The further they went, the brighter the carvings burned, as though the stone itself recognized her. Lyra stumbled, clutching Daniel's arm. It's reacting to me. I see it, Daniel whispered, scanning the path ahead. The symbols twisted into a spiral, leading toward a chamber where the air shimmered with pale light. Behind them, the hunters shouted. They're in here. Don't let them escape. Gunshots cracked, bullets sparking against stone. The cave shook with each blast. Daniel shoved Lyra forward. Go, faster! They burst into the chamber. The ceiling stretched high above, crystal-like formations glowing with blue fire. At the center stood a pedestal carved from black stone, humming with a deep ancient power. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed faster as Lyra stepped closer. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't understand it, but his gut told him this place was not built by humans. This was older, greater. The hunters poured into the chamber, guns raised. Their leader, a scarred man with cruel eyes, smirked. End of the road. Daniel raised the rusty pipe, his body shaking but his spirit unbroken. You're not taking her, the leader sneered. She isn't yours to keep, human. She belongs to us. She is our property. Lyra flinched at the word, tears filling her glowing eyes. Property. Cage. Chains. Daniel stepped in front of her, his voice steady. No, she's free. The hunters laughed. One raised his gun. But before he could fire, the pedestal blazed with light. Lyra cried out, clutching her chest. The glow of her skin flared brighter, her body trembling as if something inside her had awakened. Symbols on the walls erupted with light, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. The hunters staggered back, shielding their eyes. Daniel turned to Lyra. What's happening? Her voice shook, filled with both fear and wonder. I feel it. The guardians were right. It's inside me. Something they couldn't destroy. Energy flowed from her body into the pedestal and then back again, weaving around her like ribbons of light. Her tears glistened, but her expression changed, from fear to strength. The scarred leader shouted, Stop her! He fired his gun, the bullet flying straight toward her. Daniel moved without thought. He jumped in front of Lyra. The bullet struck his shoulder, tearing flesh, but he didn't fall. He roared in pain, gripping the pipe tighter, his body refusing to yield. Lyra gasped, reaching for him. Her light flared like a star. A shockwave burst from her body, sweeping across the chamber. The hunters were thrown back like leaves in a storm, their torches shattered, their weapons torn from their hands. The leader slammed against the wall, screaming, She's the key. The wave of light dimmed slowly, leaving the chamber silent. Daniel staggered, blood dripping down his arm but still on his feet. He turned to Lyra. She stood tall now, her silver skin glowing brighter than ever. No longer fragile, no longer broken. She looked at the hunters, her voice calm but powerful. "You will never cage me again." The hunters scrambled to their feet and fled, their fear louder than their threats. The scarred leader glared one last time before vanishing into the darkness. Silence returned. Daniel collapsed to one knee, pain surging through him. Lyra dropped beside him, her glowing hands pressing gently against his wound. Warmth spread through his body, the pain easing as her light closed the bleeding. "You saved me," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "But I saved us both." Daniel met her gaze, his voice rough but steady. "That's what freedom means. No more cages. Not for you, not for anyone." She smiled weakly, for the first time without fear. The symbols on the walls dimmed, their purpose fulfilled. The cave seemed to exhale as if relieved. Outside, dawn broke, golden light filtering into the forest. Together, Daniel and Lyra stepped into the new day. The hunters were gone, but their war was not finished. Yet for the first